Welcome back to Primary Source China Investment. This week we're on show M5, and we thought, given the auto workers' strike in the US, autos and trade would be a great place to start, because what's happening now, country by country, is very, very different, but also similar to what happened 40 years ago on the mainland. And you don't have to choose a fighter here. All you have to do is look at the size of the market and what countries are doing to protect their own. The biggest single market for autos is China. 25 million cars in the past year versus 13 and 3/4 for the US and 9 1/4 for Europe. And in China, domestic brands now account for more than 50% of sales. For 4 decades, foreign brands operating through JVs on the mainland were the majority. And it's not just the domestic market. China recently passed Japan as the largest exporter of autos. So Chinese auto industry is winning. Not just winning, they are dominating. And most of this growth is because of EVs. And China has a huge lead with over 2/3 of global sales of EVs going to Chinese manufacturers. It also controls 76% of the global battery cell production capacity and has a fierce grip on the raw materials used to make them. That makes the country's car makers' strategic advantage and the ability to build EVs at a cost-slashing scale. That's a huge runway for the Chinese EV makers. Now, some can quibble. Well, Beijing offered a lot of incentives. But at this point, Peng Guo, what's your thoughts about the China EV makers, their ability to go abroad, and the acceptance of those brands abroad?
I think firstly, I really appreciate those EV makers' efforts as well as growth. So it just make me to see the totally new car at the much lower price and affordable for the most of the people. Yeah, if I'm going back to China, definitely I will buy something. I also expect to buy like the BRD in the North American market. Looks like so fancy and pretty cool. And secondly, it's really like the hot topic in Europe. Because this is a car show in Germany and get a tremendous of the attention from different market. But I think overall, like the China export to the global market, it really depends on China's capabilities to make the good car. So I think this will give the much more incentive for other car maker. I hope them can make the much better the car in the global market.
So you brought up a number of points. One is quality, one is cost, competition. So let's take those piece by piece and location by location.
Sure.
In the US, it's a very different model. Most of the EV makers, well, other than Tesla, and we'll get to Tesla in a minute, but the internal combustion engine, the legacy auto companies have a huge burden with respect to their pensions, their wages, where they produce. You're seeing that in the UAW strike today. And also, from a legislative perspective, the NHTSA, which regulates all automobiles, has never approved the Chinese manufacturer. And going forward, the Trump signed import tax for Chinese vehicles, which at the time matched China's import duties on US autos, and Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which requires car and battery production in North America, will make it even more difficult for Chinese brands to come abroad. If Chinese brands want to sell in the US, they will need a local JV partner or buy an existing plant like Volvo did, or build their own facility like Polestar is doing. If you have any doubt how serious the US is about holding back Chinese cars from the US, just Google Ford plus CATL or Microvast. So that's the US model. And the EU model is very different because the EU has a 2030 clean car mandate, which was also echoed in the UK. It's the opening Chinese firms are using to get into these countries. China has invested more than 24 billion in the EV ecosystem in Europe last year alone. That's over half of the foreign direct investment from China into the continent. Germany's National Statistics Office said in May that imports of China-made electric vehicles from both domestic brands and Western car makers like Volkswagen building in China, so these are cars coming from China, represented 28% of all its EV imports in the first quarter. That's 3 times higher than the same period in 2022. So you're seeing the Chinese cars are coming. Countries are going to make change or update policy. And all of this relates back to trade because the auto industry is a huge industry, just like it's a huge industry in the US.
That's a pretty normal. It's really like the new technology is coming up and make the old technology get outdated.
Yeah.
And people really get nervous. But from my perspective, there's really nothing for the individual. You can do it. Technology is there. And obviously, you can take the policy, take some protection ways to protect your internal market. But sooner or later, if that really works, the old technology get outdated, is outdated. The best way is still just find the trend and follow the trend and work with other better manufacturer, maybe like the joint venture. Because in China market, they used to be like a full with a foreign brand. It's probably only one or two, the local local brand in this market. So I believe as the traditional car manufacturer, like the Europe and the United States, they should be able to figure out the new ways to create the better car. Sooner or later, it still rely on the quality to win the customers.
And that brings us to Tesla, because Tesla basically did that. They built a new automobile company out of the box.
Obviously, other car maker hated Tesla. And really, should we ban the Tesla, or really we should ask other car makers to improve your car?
And the other thing is Tesla didn't have those legacy costs affiliated with the legacy auto industry in the US. And finally, just in terms of the size of the industry, for Europe, cars on the continent is the largest industry and biggest employer, represents 10% of total manufacturing activity. So you can imagine there will be many and differentiating battles coming in down the pike. And
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And then finally, don't get too cute about the investment, because there is an index for intelligent electric vehicles on the mainland. And we'll put a chart up and put some names up, but that has underperformed the CSI 300. So as we always say, the economy is not the stock market, and what may be making news isn't necessarily what may be winning in the stocks.
Yeah, and also I want to say there are still some like the cooperation opportunities. I always see the joint names from the local Chinese company with a international brand in China. So they try to find a better way, learn the technologies from each other, and just really make full use of their own potential or advantages.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, we're going to leave it there for show M5. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.